it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello, and welcome back to Her Success Story. Excited to have today as a guest, Sara Hill. Sara is the CEO and founder of an organization, a company called Perfect Strangers. It's a fast-growing roommate matching company servicing the New York area, at least the New York area so far, I'm going to say. Stricken. So Sara, really interestingly, was stricken with the entrepreneurial bug at an early age. She began her entrepreneurial endeavors in high school. Okay, that trumps me. She's already got me. We might have to throw the whole bio under the bus and actually just talk with Sara. She's a graduate from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, a school that I too looked at for myself as one of my kids. Importantly, Sara founded Perfect Strangers in New York City in 2012 to serve a place in the market. So she helps her and her team helps individuals find their ideal roommates for apartments that they can afford in a neighborhood that suits them. And I think there's a lot to be learned here in what the different neighborhoods and what suits them is all about. So instead of continuing to read all this great information that you will be able to have access to if you read the show notes, welcome, Sara, and welcome to Her Success Story.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you having me.
So, Sara, you started Perfect Strangers in 2012. Did you one day wake up and say, damn it, I want a roommate and I'm going to figure out a way to get one? Did you say, my friend's struggling? Where did this come about?
Yeah, so I graduated UMass Amherst in going right into 2012. I graduated a semester early, and I was able to land a job on the interview, and she wanted me to start immediately. And it was an executive assistant position in a mid-sized property management firm. And me being me, I said yes right away without thinking of the logistics that would go into place of having to move to a city. Now, I lived in New York the summer before as an intern, so I had a little bit of idea of how, living in New York City was, but it was a very different world when you go from being an intern and essentially just putting your life expenses on your credit card or you're just your loan tab versus now actually having a job and really not understanding how much you can afford. Because I never really had a salaried position and I didn't really know how that was going to translate into 2 weeks with taxes and all the other fun stuff. So when I moved here and I got the job, I just started to look on Craigslist for housing, and it was an absolute nightmare. It was the scariest thing that I ever had to experience. I was going into these people's homes for the first time without ever meeting them, and it was just it just put me in a really vulnerable position. And I realized after I found a place that there was the same story over and over again, that this is the way that people found roommates in New York. This is the way people found affordable housing, was going through this really sketchy process. And me having a background in real estate, I thought, wow, this really sucks. Why does it suck so bad? Why hasn't anyone done anything about it? And so I decided to start a blog about just giving people tips and tricks about finding affordable housing and what neighborhoods to look at. And eventually that blossomed into people reaching out to me to see if I could help them. And then eventually there was a light bulb moment when I moved to my next apartment that was for a 1-year lease. And we had one available room and we put it up on Craigslist. And to my surprise, we had over 200 people respond to us who are willing to sign a 1-year lease after meeting someone for the first time. And so then that was then the light bulb moment of being like, wow, if people are willing to sign a 1-year lease together with someone they don't know, and there's clearly a lack of inventory out there for them to choose from, I could essentially go and find vacant 3-bedroom apartments in neighborhoods which were really roommate friendly and in high demand, and essentially just match people based on, their personality, and then also be this third-party person that could really get the honest answers out of them and also help them through the process of signing a lease. And then that's when Perfect Strangers was really born, and slowly but surely, I just worked my way to turning it from a side hustle to a full-time gig.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So clearly, I'll always say great entrepreneurs are people who are willing to take the big R word, the big risks.
Yeah.
Now, clearly, you said yes to a job in New York City based on one interview while you were still in college.
Mm-hmm.
That's a woman who's willing to jump in with 2 feet. A woman who's willing to jump into 2 feet. So where are you originally from?
Originally from Rochester, New York, in a really small town outside of Rochester. So grew up on a kind of a farm.
Okay, so now we have this kind of sort of farm girl from Rochester, New York, who said, yeah, sure. You want me to start at this job in New York City? Like, no big deal. I'm in. I'll see you in a few weeks. It is also a woman who is willing to jump in with 2 feet. You know, so there's no surprise what you've been able to create based on the woman you are. So what really intrigues me is I have a daughter who has navigated in the New York area. I have a son who's in LA who's navigated it on his side. And I've seen the things that worked and the things that don't. And I'm trying my best not to be that helicopter mom on most days and let them figure it out. But, you know, here's a couple of things that I'm hearing you say is, okay, so we had one room and we had a response of 200 and you're expected to not just go to work with this person, but actually live in your pajamas, when you're sick, when you're not well, when you're dealing with friend things and family things, and in the big life piece. And you know nothing about these people.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you? How did nobody do this before you? And did that scare the crap out of you, saying, oh, somebody has to do it. This has to be somewhere, somehow, no?
Yeah, I know. I mean, and you point the pain point right on the head, because that's really, you know, when you live with someone, people forget how intimate that is. And a lot of people are just jumping into things. You know, in New York, you don't have time to date your roommate. You know, it's not like one of those things where you get to go on a 6-month date with your roommate and then figure out, okay, we're compatible, like we should live together. So, you know, for our service to be able to be that third party and really kind of get down to the nitty gritty of living with someone, it's so important. For me, it was just really important to just start. You know, I just saw, you know, I wanted to help people, and that's just my personality. I always want to help people. And it was just a matter of finding an apartment and seeing if I could do it. You know, and there wasn't anyone else that was doing this before, but I didn't let that scare me. I thought, you know, it was a great opportunity to pave my own path. And so I went with it, and there was no structure to do it because no one else had done it.
So when you first got started, you actually went and found 3-bedroom apartments.
Mm-hmm.
So that's clearly the real estate girl in you.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And you said when you graduated, you got a job as an executive assistant for somebody already in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got these 3 bedrooms, and then where in the world did you find people?
I just posted the room. So when I had that 3-bedroom apartment, where I lived the apartment for myself, and I posted the room on Craigslist, I essentially did the same thing for when I found these other vacant apartments. So I just posted a room on Craigslist, and I said, hey, here's a great room, looking to match some compatible roommates. Feel free to reach out to me and I can set up a showing. And people were really responsive to that. And then I met the people in person for the first time and can kind of vet through the people who I thought would be, 1, seriously interested in the apartment, and then 2, be compatible to live with one another.
So was there a process you developed? And I'm not asking you to give away your trade secrets, but it goes from an idea to a business. When things transition from, as you said, a side hustle to something that you're actually building as a business full time, you know, systems and processes go into place. Is there an algorithm? Is there an intake? Share a little bit, without giving away your secrets, how you figured this out and what do you do?
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error at first. It was really just, I'm also a wing it type of person. So I just kind of go full in and then figure it out. I learn best when I make my mistakes. So in the beginning, it was just really, you know, every deal I learned a little bit more, and I made a mistake and then I learned something from it, and then I implement it in the process moving forward to really get to the best quality people to put together. So eventually, after meeting with a lot of different clients, I formed a questionnaire, all the important questions that I thought was important to ask, initially for a client. And then from there, I started to form other processes, again, just as time went on. But yeah, it was, so right now the way that our process works, and now there's a proven process. Now that I've done this for 6 years, we have a pretty streamlined process. So the first step for our clients is to fill out a questionnaire. It gives us a better idea of what they're looking for. And also, a lot of our clients are not familiar with New York City, so it gives us an opportunity to figure out what they don't know. So a lot of times people are moving from Chicago or from Oklahoma or wherever, and they only have an idea of living in New York that's painted in the media. So it's our job to really kind of give them a realistic point of view on finding housing, and also how to find some affordable housing and some basically hacks to what they don't know. So, we may have a person coming from Oklahoma who's starting their first job in Midtown Manhattan and thinks that they have to live in Midtown in order to work there. But the truth is they don't have to do that. They can live in a neighborhood like Astoria and pay only $1,200 a month and have a really nice commute into the city. And also not have to be living in Midtown. So we really kind of build that relationship with our clients from the beginning to really understand what they're looking for. And that really starts with the questionnaire. From there, then they start to browse rooms. Once they have an idea what their budget should be and what their timeline is and where they want to live, then they can browse our listings with all the available apartments that we have, and then schedule time to view them in person with one of our roommate matchmakers.
Nice. So, in building this, there has had to have been a whole bunch of surprises that came your way.
Yes.
Can you share one or two?
Well, what's funny is that because I didn't know what I was doing, there wasn't really anything surprising because I didn't know what to expect. So, I mean, I think I didn't understand how tough it would be to grow a business. I think for me, it was really easy to play the small game. For me, if it was just Sara as a roommate matchmaker and I just worked with my clients, that was a really easy life, but it wasn't challenging to me. And at one point I think it was in 2016, I was really close to kind of giving it up because I couldn't figure out how to grow the business until I enrolled into a business coaching program for a year on how to leverage your business. And hello. And then from there, I learned what I had to do to build a team and to kind of break down the process and train people, basically how to duplicate myself. So that was a really big surprise that, one, I wouldn't be, even though I was making a lot of money and it was actually really easy to do on my own, that I wasn't fulfilled by that. And so it's kind of one of those things where I constantly have to keep challenging myself in growing the business and growing a business as a bootstrap company, because we're not funded. Everything has been bootstrapped, is a different process than a lot of other companies go through as they receive funding. So it's a lot of trial and error.
I get it. Wholeheartedly. So, in growing this team and in growing yourself, you've now been in New York City for
6 years,
6+ years, right? Your personal world has evolved.
Yes.
let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. So I met my husband about 4 or 5 years ago, and we got married last year. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And now we're expecting. So we're expecting a little boy in February of 2019, when we're so excited. So that is
exciting.
Yeah, that's going to open up a whole new world of challenges, which will be very fulfilling because that's how I am. I like to be challenged. So,
in looking forward, and it's interesting as we become moms. I think every parent is a teacher, whether we realize it or not. Mm-hmm. And in looking forward, so Perfect Strangers started in 2012. In 2022 and 2032, what would you like to see accomplished? Looking back.
Yeah, with Perfect Strangers, the way that I really envision the future for Perfect Strangers is is one, the number one marketplace in order to connect with people, to live with, and really kind of redefining the co-living community versus it just being a place to live affordably, but also to really build relationships with people. You know, I see this world where, you know, people are more so interested in experiences versus, versus just like having a fancy apartment. And I found in the last few years, people are more and more interested in paying less for their living expenses than they would, you know, before. So I see that there's going to be a change in even like, you know, I envision like a woman that's a single mother that has a child. She may want to live with another single woman and almost like a co-living but co-parenting, you know, or couples living together with other couples, or living in these, you know, buildings that are community focused, where people in their building know their neighbors and rely upon their neighbors for a cup of sugar or, you know, for a favor, or also just to get to know one another. And I really want Perfect Strangers to be, you know, the launching point of that and helping to cultivate and kind of bringing back the humanity into living.
It truly, it's bringing, what you're sharing is bringing us back to principles from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you did know your neighbors. I remember raising my kids in New York. When my daughter was in preschool, this is here. So here's a little funny story on this end.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter was in preschool. My son was a newborn, and we were baking brownies or cupcakes for some, I don't know, whatever, if it was a special occasion, if it was a bake sale, if it was whatever it was at the time. I'm going back probably 23 years to date.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were short an egg. So we knocked next door. And the funny thing at the time is our next door neighbor was Judge Judy before she got famous. And, you know, and Judy and Jerry Shining, it was like, you know, knock next door. It's like, and the little Alex, who my daughter used to have these big glasses on at that point, she's like, Judy, do you have an egg? I'm bringing something for school tomorrow. And it's the fact of knowing your neighbors, and it's knowing, you know, when it was raining in the morning, and Judy's husband Jerry used to very often have a car that drove him to the Bronx to court, and he's like, "Let me drop you guys. Don't, you know, look, because we'd have that stroller with the plastic, being New York City people." And it's that, back to that idea of knowing your neighbors and being able to knock next door.
Yeah. And not enough people, you know, in New York City, especially. I mean, you look at these high-rise buildings and you just think, like, if everyone in the building knew one another, when someone wanted to sell their a sideboard, or if someone needed a cup of sugar or an egg, or their babysitter flaked on them, like, how amazing would it be to be able to build those relationships in your building, and even friendships? Like, how convenient would that be? And for Perfect Strangers, I envision these co-living communities where we call and cultivate a building based on what people are looking for, not just in their home, but also in their community.
Very cool. I'm liking it.
Yeah.
So what relationships have made an impact on you in this entrepreneurial world? And jumping in here with 2 feet.
Yeah. I mean, I think really was meeting my husband. You know, I was on this path. You know, if you would have asked me 5 years ago what my future would have looked like, I really thought it was going to be this powerhouse woman who had this kick-ass, you know, apartment in the West Village and was conquering the world, and it was traveling and was just doing everything that Sara wanted to do without anyone else, you know, in the mix. But when I met my husband, things quickly changed, and it wasn't just Sara's world. It was a world of two people, and the life that we live together is much happier than I could ever imagine a life by myself. And, you know, I think I was afraid of meeting someone and having that disrupt my, you know, path of uber success. But in retrospect, I'm really grateful for that, because it's the life that I actually really want. I wanted to be able to have a family and be successful. It's not like Sara's slowing down by any means, but it's also, I have someone to come home to and someone to support me. And I believe it's a much happier life than if I was to live on my own and do my own thing.
So we know your family's growing.
Yes.
Okay. Love, yeah, the impact that your now husband has made on what's possible, you know, how you have now see possibility.
Mm-hmm.
What's, you know, Perfect Strangers is growing. Where do you see this? Where do you see what's next for Perfect Strangers? What's the story? Give us some insight here.
Yeah, so Perfect Strangers is like my first baby.
Oh, it is.
So
Having birthed businesses as I birthed children, oh, yes, it is.
yes. And so, you know, I happen to be also having a baby, but Perfect Strangers still very much is a baby right presently. And it's going to be growing. I'm going to be fundraising during my pregnancy. I could play the safe game and maintain kind of a small business, which is amazing. Like, not to discredit other small businesses. I think that, you know, small businesses don't get enough credibility, you know, mentions out in the media. But I do understand that in order for me to grow my business and really scale it and make the impact that I want to have, that I need additional resources to do so. So it can be done faster. So I will be seeking out our first round of funding while being pregnant. So that will be a really exciting journey.
You know what it sounds like? At the same time you're registering for the baby, you're registering to grow Perfect Strangers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? We're going to have two registries for Sara.
Right.
And for those of you who are in alignment with the Birthing the Baby Boy, and for those of you who are in alignment with Perfect Strangers, Perfect Strangers going out for fundraising.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself staying in New York or New York City as your main target, or branching out?
I definitely see for Perfect Strangers really to be in any city where co-living is needed to make things more affordable. So I definitely see us being in Boston and Philadelphia, Miami, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, and then even abroad. London and other cities are also very expensive. And so, yeah, I definitely see us having a global impact.
Love it.
Yeah.
So what is, you know, in your several years of entrepreneurship, 6 years of entrepreneurship, tell us about something that's impacted you, a lesson you've learned that's made an impact.
You know, I think that the lesson / challenge, you know, I learned the best through my challenges and when I'm really kind of, when I'm really pulled the most and stretched the most. And that was really in December of 2017. So I was, you know, in my business, it is seasonal. So things do slow down. The busiest season is the summer, as a lot of people are graduating and moving to the city and starting their first jobs. And then things slow down in November and December, and we'll pick it back up again, you know, the following year. And last year, I was really all about scaling and growing the business and building a team. And so I had a lot of people on payroll that weren't making money for the business. And when it got slower, and I had two females who had moved to New York City to work for Perfect Strangers and basically picked up their whole life to work for Perfect Strangers. So I felt really responsible for them. I felt like, you know, I made them move here. So I kept them on longer than I needed, that really the business could afford. And I put a lot of money on my personal debt, and in order to keep them on longer than they needed. But it all came to a halt in December of last year when I ran out of money. There was no money in the bank account. There was no credit card, you know, nothing on credit cards I could put. And I had to let basically everyone go. And at the same time, I had a miscarriage. And it was the hardest month I ever went through. But what I learned from it was I basically shut down my first business, and then I restarted in 2018 a brand new business. And from everything that I learned in the last 5-6 years of having Perfect Strangers, I now knew what not to do in 2018. And I essentially restarted the business from scratch. I went back to, square one of how I knew how to close business and make money for the business. And then only hired people when it came time. And I learned to be more vulnerable or more transparent with people that are hiring, that could understand that this is a small business. This is not a funded company. And if we run out of money, we run out of money. And so from all those challenges, from the previous years, it really stretched me to kind of pivot the business going into 2018 and thinking about it differently.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
Because people, I talk a lot on Her Success Stories and when I speak about the journey of being a business owner. Mm-hmm. We've all run out of money.
Yeah.
At some point, or we've all had a challenge that has looked insurmountable. And there is, something that kind of says, and my heart feels for your heart going through that at the same time of a miscarriage. But I recently said to somebody, just put one thing in an alignment and you'll see how they all start falling back into place. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, and this is so clearly, you took the bull by the horns and you said, okay, what can I do? And that's how you approached it. And because of it, your business and your personal world have aligned in a growing way for yourself and your family in 2018 and 2019.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's a perseverance. It's the, I thought about myself. I thought about it in 2007, in that month, I was like, I'm going to be an Uber driver. I can't do this anymore. I can't go through the stresses of feeling responsible for other people's financial well-being. And then also having to take care of myself. It was always me was down the totem pole. It was always, I paid other people before I even paid myself. And I realized how toxic that was, not just for me, but for the people around myself as too. I wasn't able to lead, the people that were under me because I was in such a unhealthy mindset. And in 2018 and really this year, I went back to basics and I said, this is not going to work. This is the way it's going to be. And until I can, work on myself and work on my business and make it healthy all around is only when it's going to really grow and be successful. So I'm very, I'm really appreciative. And that's something about my personality is that I always look to the positives in every situation. And I'm grateful to have those challenges and to be able to overcome them and realize how strong and how determined I really am. You're
a smart young lady.
Thank you.
And now I say that from the heart because it takes a woman who's smart, a woman who has inner strength, and a woman who's willing always to see what's possible and see the vision and go for it. Mm-hmm. And those are the women leaders that we all have the ability to look up to, admire, and learn from. So thank you for sharing so much and so honest to God, authentically and real today.
No, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so. And I don't really share a lot of this with a lot of people, but I felt really, it's my calling, and I feel like in the upcoming years, I'm really working on my personal brand and to be able to share these things because, when you're in the success, sometimes you only want to paint the good. You only want to show the good stuff on Instagram. You only want to show the filtered images. But I think that if I had someone to relate to who went through all the challenges that I have, which I'm not the only one that has gone through these things, that it would have felt a little less lonely. And so I'm really going into this upcoming year, I'm really going to be more vulnerable about my journey and using my personal brand to speak to women who are looking to grow businesses and are doing so in growing in their personal lives. You can have your cake and eat it too. You don't have to wait to have a family while building your career. You can do both things. And I want to show people my journey. And I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do it.
You are. And I'm going to say, what's really cool about the Slate of Success team, out of 4 people on our team plus myself, so total 5 of us, 4 of us are moms. I'm the only one with grown children. Everybody else has young kids, and everybody else is figuring out how to have their cake and eat it too. And we're doing it, and everybody's terms are a little different.
Yep.
And it's all working.
Yep, exactly.
So we get to be the definers. Love it. So how do people follow you, learn more, stay in touch? Of course, we're going to, and everything you tell us is going to be in the show notes. So don't panic, guys. If you're not catching what Sara's saying, you can look down and it's online. But how do we stay in touch and learn more and follow your journey?
Yeah, so on a personal level, you can follow my Instagram at Sara Beth Romero. So I'm going to be sharing a lot more, as I mentioned, about my upcoming exciting journeys in my life and business. With Perfect Strangers, everything can be essentially found using the @PS of NYC. So the abbreviations of Perfect Strangers of NYC. So our Instagram is @PS of NYC. You can go to our website, which is just psofnyc.com. You can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, pretty much as you just search @PS of NYC on any social platform, you'll find us.
Awesome. And Sara had some great tips and some great insight into what it is to build a company and what it is to build a company and have a growing personal life, including a baby on the way. And again, I so appreciate your realness and your authenticity today. So remember to follow Sara. Remember to, hey, if you're looking for a roommate, of course, check out PS at NYC. And most importantly as well, don't forget to follow and subscribe to her success stories so you can be notified on many, many other great interviews with people who are as awesome as Sara Hill today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me today.
Thank you.